Most people meet Kybalion the way they meet a viral quote, fast and disposable. A book from 1908, signed by masked teachers. It sits on shelves beside crystals and self-help. Everyone can recite the 7 laws. Almost no one can show you, in daily life, what those laws do. That's the paradox. The most accessible gateway into Hermetic thought has become its efficient distraction. The older Hermetic stream never worked like this. In the Greek-Egyptian dialogues we now call the Corpus Hermeticum, knowledge is not information. It is a change in being. A later depth psychologist, reading alchemical notebooks, warned that symbols only heal when they are lived, when the psyche becomes a laboratory, not a library. The emerald tablet is only a handful of lines long, yet it demands a lifetime of experiment. So in this film, we stop collecting principles like souvenirs and start using them like tools to dissolve bad habits, quiet compulsive reactions, and rebuild the mind from the inside today. Imagine an apprentice in an old harbor city, ink on fingers, soot in the lungs, watching a metalworker heat crude ore. The master doesn't believe in heat. He uses it. He tests it. He respects what it does to matter. Hermetic practice works the same way. Not as philosophy you admire, but as an art you perform. The Kybalion gives laws, but not the daily drills that make them real. So we'll rebuild what's missing, an operational method. Each law becomes a 2-part instrument. First, a diagnosis, where your mind is asleep. Then a practice, how to wake it. That's what the old alchemists meant by inner work. The psyche as a furnace, habits as the raw metal. In Neoplatonic language, you climb the ladder from scattered impulses back toward unity. In Kabbalistic language, you move from automatic reaction toward balance on the inner tree. Same aim, different maps. Here's the rule for the whole film. Treat every principle as a 7-day experiment. No blind faith. No spiritual aesthetic. Just results you can verify in modern life. Law 1. Mentalism. All is mind. Most people hear that and slip into fantasy. If I think positively, life obeys. That isn't Hermeticism. That's wish-making. Mentalism is sharper, almost clinical. Everything you experience is filtered through consciousness, and the filter shapes the world you think you are seeing. Try this in real time. You open your phone and see a message with a short reply. Ok. Instantly, the body tightens. The mind writes a story. Rejection, disrespect, danger. But notice, the screen contains only pixels. The suffering arrives when mind adds interpretation. This is the first liberation, separating event from meaning. Practice. For 7 days, whenever emotion spikes, ask one question. What am I adding? Not, who caused this? But what narrative did I attach? This is how you build the observing mind, a steady witness inside the storm. In Jung's language, you stop being possessed by a complex. In alchemical language, you begin calcination, the burning away of the false I that thinks it is its moods. Law 2. Correspondence. A is above, so below. People turn this into decoration, a slogan on a poster. But correspondence is a mechanic of pattern. What happens in your inner world repeats itself across your outer world, like a melody played in different octaves. A merchant in a late Renaissance city once kept 2 ledgers, one for coins, one for dreams. He noticed something strange. Whenever fear ruled his sleep, his deals became desperate. When his inner life steadied, money flowed with less strain. Different arenas, same signature. That is correspondence, the microcosm revealing the macrocosm. Practice. Keep a pattern journal, not a diary. Don't record what happened. Record where it repeats. Where does the same emotional flavor appear? Work, romance, health, scrolling, spending. Then ask, what inner posture is creating this outer loop? This is how bad habits expose themselves. Overeating isn't only about food. It's a relationship with comfort. Procrastination is laziness. It's a relationship with fear and self-worth. In Jung's depth work, this is symbolic literacy. In Hermetic terms, you learn to read life like a manuscript written by your own mind. Law 3. Vibration. Nothing rests. Everything moves. Your habits are not traits. They are frequencies you return to, like a song your nervous system memorized. Anxiety has a tempo. Craving has a pulse. Doom scrolling has its own hypnosis. Narrow attention, shallow breath, time distortion. An old physician alchemist described illness as disharmony of motion. Today we'd say dysregulated state. Different language, same observation. Mind and body are always vibrating somewhere. And that somewhere shapes what you choose. Practice. You don't fight a frequency with insults. You change the channel. For 7 days, train a 3-step switch. Breath. Slow exhale longer than inhale. Posture. Open chest, soften jaw, unclench hands. Focus. Choose one clear object, one sentence, one candle flame, one intention, and return to it gently. This is not fake positivity. It's state management. The point is to prove to yourself, I can shift the inner weather. When you can shift state, bad habits lose their strongest weapon, automatic momentum. In alchemical terms, you learn to move the fire, not be burned by it. Law 4. Polarity. Everything has its pair of opposites. Most people wage war on themselves. They try to delete anger, erase jealousy, amputate desire. Polarity says, impossible. These forces are not separate species. They are endpoints of one spectrum. A monk once confessed to an elder, I want to be pure, but rage keeps returning. The elder replied, then you have strong fire. Stop cursing the fire. Learn to cook with it. That is the law. The energy inside hatred is the same fuel inside protection, loyalty, courage, only aimed differently. Practice. Choose one bad emotion you keep suppressing. For 7 days, do not act it out. Translate it. Ask, what does this emotion protect? What boundary is it trying to draw? What value is hidden inside the poison? Then shift along the spectrum. Rage minus assertion. Jealousy minus devotion to what matters. Shame minus conscience refined into integrity. Jung's called this shadow integration, not making darkness holy, but making it conscious. Alchemists called it transmutation. Same substance, new form. Law 5. Rhythm. Everything flows out and in. If you think transformation is a straight line, rhythm will break you. Energy rises, falls, returns. Motivation surges, then disappears. Clarity arrives, then fog. Most people interpret the downward swing as failure and panic. Then they relapse into old habits to regain a familiar identity. But the Hermetic view is colder and kinder. Cycles are not personal. They are natural. Even the moon teaches it. Waxing, full, waning, dark. The mistake is not the descent. The mistake is identifying with it. Practice. For 7 days, map your tides. When do you feel strongest? When do cravings spike? When does your mind look for drama? Track it like weather, not like a moral report card. Then learn the hidden skill, the neutral point. When you feel yourself rising, don't cling. When you feel yourself falling, don't collapse. Stand at the axis. This is equanimity as balance, not numbness. Jung's described a law of reversal. Any extreme flips into its opposite. Rhythm makes that visible. The goal is not permanent, high vibration. The goal is stability through change, so your habits stop ruling you every time the tide turns. Law 6. Cause and effect. Every effect has its cause. This law is a blade. It cuts both victimhood and fantasy power. You are not helpless, and you are not a god. You are a participant in chains of causality, many visible, most hidden. A judge in an ancient city once noticed the same offenders returning. He thought the cause was bad character. A wise counselor told him, "Look earlier. The theft began at hunger. Hunger began at exile. Exile began at a family feud. One act was never one act. It was a river with many sources. Practice. Pick one habit you hate. Procrastination, overeating, scrolling, anger, whatever enslaves you. Don't moralize it. Trace it. For 7 days, ask, what triggers it? What feeling comes first? What belief sits underneath? What old memory does it protect? You will find the habit is often a solution to pain, not a random defect. This is Hermetic psychoanalysis, excavating the unseen causes that keep generating the same effects. And here is the liberation. You may not control the first cause, but you can interrupt the chain now, at the earliest link you can see. Law 7. Gender, masculine, and feminine are in everything. This is not biology. It's polarity inside function. The active and the receptive, the shaping and the receiving, the penetrating focus and the patient gestation. When one side dominates, habits form like crooked bones. A scribe in a desert school was brilliant but unstable. He devoured texts, formed grand plans, and collapsed into chaos. His teacher said, "You have too much seed, no soil." Another student had endless sensitivity, endless dreaming, yet never acted. The teacher said, "You have soil, no seed." Both suffered from the same imbalance. Practice. Identify your default mode. Are you stuck in constant action, workaholism, control, compulsive fixing? Or stuck in constant receptivity, waiting, fantasizing, absorbing moods, drowning in content? For 7 days, cultivate the missing principle. If you are overactive, schedule silence, journaling, slow body practices. If you are over-receptive, choose one small act daily and complete it, no matter the mood. Jung's called this the inner marriage. Anim and animus becoming allies. Alchemists called it the union of sun and moon. When these cooperate, habits loosen, because your psyche stops fighting itself. Now we step beyond 7 separate laws. The real practice is how they lock together, like gears. Mentalism shows you the story you were adding. Correspondence shows where the story repeats. Vibration gives you the lever to change state. Polarity teaches you to transmute instead of repress. Rhythm trains you not to panic during the downswing, cause an effect reveals the hidden chain. Gender restores balance so the system holds. This is why people stay stuck even after years of reading. They collect symbols, but never build a protocol. So here is the protocol. Simple, modern, ruthless. The daily Hermetic loop, 15 minutes. Observe one reaction, mentalism. Find the pattern it belongs to, correspondence. Shift state with breath, plus posture, vibration. Translate the emotion into its higher pole, polarity. Name the cycle you were in. Rhythm. Trace the trigger back one layer. Cause effect. Balance the mode. Act or receive. Gender. Do this daily and your life becomes an experiment, not a drama. You stop asking, is the Kybalion true? And start asking, what happens when I apply it? Today, on my worst habit. Here's what no one tells you. When the protocol starts working, you may feel worse before you feel free, because your old habits were not only bad, they were protective spells, rituals the psyche used to manage fear, loneliness, shame, boredom. This is where the alchemists placed the black phase, not as punishment, but as necessity. The old identity decays. The mind loses its favorite exits. The comfort lies fall apart. And suddenly you can escape yourself the way you used to. A young noble once entered a mystery school expecting power. Instead, he was assigned a humiliating task: carry water, clean ash, keep silence. He almost quit. Only later he understood. The school was training status. It was training inner obedience, the ability to stay present when ego screams. In Jung's terms, this is confrontation with the self, the wider psyche that refuses your performance. It doesn't want your spiritual personality. It wants your honesty. So if practice triggers grief, irritation, emptiness, don't label it failure. Label it contact. You are touching the layer beneath the habit. This is also where people split into 3 common traps. Trap 1, the librarian. You read more to avoid doing. The mind becomes a museum of quotes. But nothing changes because knowledge never reaches the nervous system. Trap 2, the actor. You perform transformation. You speak like an initiate, post like a sage, but your private life is still ruled by compulsion. The persona grows while the shadow grows stronger. Trap 3, the patient. You pathologize every dark phase. You treat necessary inner friction as a disorder to remove immediately. Sometimes care is needed, yes, but not all pain is pathology. Some pain is the psyche reorganizing. Hermetic training threads the needle. Compassion without indulgence, rigor without cruelty. You don't shame yourself for having habits. You also don't romanticize them. Practice for 7 days. When you relapse or react, do one thing differently. Remove the second arrow. The first arrow is the urge. The second arrow is self-hatred. Drop the second arrow and you keep your power. This is why Manly Hall warned against the illusion of quick initiation. The real temple is character, and character is built through repeated, unglamorous choices. Now let's make it painfully modern. How do the 7 laws work when your enemy is not a demon in the desert, but a glowing rectangle in your pocket? Mentalism. The phone is neutral. The trance is the meaning you add. I must check. I might miss. I am falling behind. Correspondence. Notice how the same hunger appears elsewhere. Snacking, gossip, shopping, porn, doom news. Same void, different costume. Vibration. Scrolling lowers breath and narrows attention. So the antidote is physical. Stand, breathe, widen vision for 60 seconds. Polarity. The urge to escape contains a desire to rest. Translate escape minus restoration. Close the app. Take a real break. Rhythm. Cravings peak in waves. If you don't feed the first peak, it often falls. Surf it for 3 minutes. Cause. Effect. The trigger might be micro-shame. I can face my task. Trace it back to fear of failure. Gender. Balance modes. Receive inspiration intentionally. Read 1 page. Then act. Write 1 paragraph. No endless intake. This is the occult in plain clothes, not spooky powers, but sovereignty over attention, the currency of the modern world. If you keep applying this, something quiet happens. Your inner life becomes less theatrical and more precise. You start catching the moment before the habit, before the binge, before the angry text, before the spiral. That, before, is the philosopher's stone in embryo. Old alchemical writers hid this behind strange images. A king drowned, a lion devouring the sun, a wedding of fire and water. Jung argued these weren't literal. They were maps of psychic change. The ego dies not as suicide, but as surrender of its obsession with control. And here's the ethical twist most people miss. Once you see correspondence clearly, once you feel the unity behind the masks, you can use this work to manipulate others without poisoning yourself. Selfish magic backfires because the boundary you exploit is the same boundary you are made of. So the practice matures into something simple. You become harder to hypnotize, harder to provoke, harder to bribe with cheap pleasure. You still feel life, maybe more than before, but you stop being dragged. This is what the Hermetic traditions meant by liberation, not escape from the world, but freedom inside the world. So here's the final test. Forget debating whether the Kybalion is authentic. Forget arguing online about secret lineages. The only question that matters is operational. What happens to your life when you practice the laws as a daily discipline? 7 laws, 7 experiments, 1 laboratory, your own consciousness. If you do nothing else, take this. Pick one habit that's been humiliating you, one loop that steals your time, your dignity, your future. For the next 7 days, don't fight it with willpower. Study it with Hermetic method. Observe the story. Find the pattern. Shift the state. Transmute the emotion. Track the cycle. Trace the cause. Balance the mode. Then repeat, quietly, until your nervous system learns a new language. This is the real great work. Not turning lead into gold, but turning reaction into response. Turning compulsion into choice. Turning fragmentation into a single, steady mind. If you want the next film, I'll go deeper into the Corpus tradition and the inner alchemy behind A's above, so below. With a full 7-day workbook you can follow step by step. Until then, stop quoting. Start practicing.